This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Roman Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. Today I have with me Jean Ginzburg. Jean is a #1 best-selling author, award-winning digital marketing expert, speaker, and entrepreneur. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to be on the show.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
You mean from my entrepreneurial journey?
If both personal, entrepreneurial, if they're connected. Obviously, we talked offline that, you're from the former Soviet Union, and I know immigrants in the U.S. are responsible for a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors and founding companies. So whatever you think is relevant to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can definitely start from the beginning. Yep. We didn't talk offline. Yep. So I was born in Russia and came to the States when I was 8, right around the time that the Berlin Wall fell. So, came here literally with $100 in our pocket with me and my family, and typical story of the, of the immigrant. Came here with nothing and just, had to make the best of everything. So, yeah, it is true. I do find that a lot of immigrants are also entrepreneurs in the United States, just because I don't know, maybe they have the grit to withstand being the challenges of being an entrepreneur. I don't know. I guess there's many reasons for that. So after I came here, I went to school and all that stuff, and then graduated from college and worked at a few jobs, but always had the entrepreneurial bug in me. After college, I kind of always thought in the back of my mind that eventually I would maybe want to do something on my own. And that feeling grew stronger and stronger, and eventually I decided that I didn't want to work for the man anymore, and I was working at a company, at an agency, and I was like, I could do a much better job servicing clients directly versus working for a company. So I pulled the plug, and almost 7 years ago, I started my own thing. It was definitely small in the beginning, but I think that's how most entrepreneurial endeavors are, right? You start on your own in your basement. Typically, I didn't have a basement, but I started on my own and started looking for clients. Luckily, in the beginning, I was really consulting for primarily one client, so it was kind of an easy transition for me to go from working full time to consulting for one client, pretty much full time. But then I decided, 6 months into it, that one client is probably not enough, because what happens if this one client leaves, which of course eventually they did, we parted ways. So I decided to start looking for additional clients, and that's how the agency grew, and how the agency started, I guess, and grew. And then now 7 years later, we have the agency still. So we still service clients, primarily digital marketing, content strategy, content marketing, video, social media. We're really big on using social media strategies. And now we also have a consultancy, so that's more just directing companies that have a need for a strategic lead in digital marketing. And then we also have an education company, or an education part of our company, that is trainings and digital courses that teach up-and-coming entrepreneurs how to use digital marketing in their business. So that's pretty much my story, I'd say, in 2 or 3 minutes.
Nice. And in terms of kind of your formal education, was that in a digital marketing or marketing discipline, or is that something you transitioned in and learned on your own?
Absolutely not. I went to a liberal arts school, and my degree was in public policy and international relations, so basically political science, and completely not relevant at all to what I'm doing now. After college, I did think about going into Washington, D.C. And just because I speak Russian, I was recruited by the CIA at one point. But I figured that was not really my path. Working for an organization like the CIA or any sort of government organization is a very much long-term commitment, and I didn't think that that's what I wanted to do. Just maybe because I think the entrepreneurial bug was in my head that time as well. So yeah, all of the stuff that I learned about digital marketing was either through the jobs that I had or just on my own, and through the companies that I've worked with and worked at. So yeah, no formal education in marketing at all.
Yeah, I find that kind of a commonality through people I speak with and people I worked with in the past. I have a degree in criminal justice and interned with the Secret Service and then basically graduated when the economy tanked. So I had to pivot to something and an opportunity presented itself, and I basically grew in the field. And I feel like a lot of people transition into the marketing field. That's something obviously psychology based, and you have other elements in terms of not just kind of the technicality of what you're doing, but really understand people. And I think it's a great transition for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that sounds like a similar situation that you were in. You had a degree that was completely not related to marketing. And then how did you decide to get into marketing?
Basically, I couldn't find a job. State, federal, and local agencies froze hiring and spending in 2008, 2009. I was looking for a job for months, and then just working out every day. Basically, that's the only thing that kept me sane. And I met someone that gave me a packet about search engine optimization from his trunk outside of the gym and said, take a month or two, learn this, read up on it online. You can do it for my company. And that's kind of, I ran with it for the last 11 years.
Oh, wow. Well, serendipity, huh? Just you decided to talk to somebody and they gave you a packet from the back of their trunk of their car, huh?
Yeah, and it was a necessity at that point, and I kind of, fell in love with it, and it's just second nature. It's something I don't even think about for a lot of industries and clients. I just, develop a strategy and know how to do it at this point because it's, repetition, even though the industry changes, that kind of good content and the psychological aspect of it doesn't.
Yeah, that's very true.
So what motivates you to succeed?
I would say serving my community and serving my clients. So over the last few years, I've really been working a lot on building out my community through my social media channels and through other channels as well, but primarily I'd say through social media. I really say that for me, it's like every time getting up in the morning for me is really wanting to help entrepreneurs succeed. And that's what I'm passionate about. I think over time, in the beginning, it was like I was just trying to help myself succeed, and I was passionate about that part. But then as things grew and as my company grew and I started working with more entrepreneurs, and that's really who we service, those are the types of clients we work with. I was like, well, really, it's more about, it's just obviously it's more than just me. It's about trying to serve these companies and help them achieve their goals. So yeah, for me, that's what I find the success. And I think, after that, the success kind of comes. It comes in line with wanting to help people and wanting to, share your knowledge, wanting to, wanting to really service your clients and service your community. So I would say, yeah, that's the success. I feel like is a byproduct of that, and the money or whatever that comes out of the services is also kind of a byproduct of that. But really, the first thing is just servicing your clients and serving the community.
Yeah, I agree, and I think at some point I went away from let's chase money to a legacy standpoint per se, like you're saying. And when I switched over to that legacy, that, those earnings naturally came from doing the right thing to others, helping others, people seeing that, obviously that adding to my personal brand, not necessarily doing it for the wrong reasons, but people seeing me volunteer, do this, do that, give out a lot of free information to companies, and, it started getting noticed. So I think that's a great approach to have, and it's rewarding as well.
Yeah, and it took a little bit of time for me to change that mindset. I do feel like it was a mindset shift, just because I think when I first started being an entrepreneur, it was like, being success is making, is earning a lot of revenue for the company, and that's kind of, I think, a lot of times ingrained. At least it wasn't me when I first started being an entrepreneur. I think a lot of, entrepreneurs can probably say that's the case. So I had to have a mindset shift where it was like, it's not just about making the money or like bringing in revenue. Of course it's important for the business, but it's really about, servicing community.
Yeah, I agree. So what's one thing that you've had as a weakness that you've seen in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
Weakness. I would say processes have been at one point in my career a weakness. And when I first started my business, there were really no processes at all. And things were just kind of like done on the fly, and it was very reactive. Which is not the best way to run a business. I think a lot of businesses do run their business that way, and it's really, in my opinion, not really the best thing to do. And every place I even worked at before I started my own company, there were really no processes, and so I had to really learn that on my own. That you have to set up processes, and it has to be a procedure-driven business in order to be successful. Because if you're just being reactive all the time, then that business is not going to be very successful. So over time, I've had to create standard operating procedures for everything in our business, for our business and for our clients' businesses on all of the projects that we work on that. And so everything is now documented. We have a Trello board that we use. We use Trello as a project management tool, but we also use that as we have a board for the standard operating procedures for all of our processes and our clients' processes, so that if anybody's new who comes on board, I actually just hired someone a couple of months ago. When she first started, I just hey, go through this whole, go through the standard operating procedure and Trello board and review all of the videos, review all of the step-by-step, items, and as you're creating all of these, campaigns and whatnot, then you're using all of the standard operating procedures. So that's something I actually had to learn, but I'm very thankful that I did, and that I've implemented that in my business, because it's just become so. It also allows me to step away from my business more and work more on strategy, work more on doing things like this, podcasts, speaking engagements, writing my book or books that I've written a book. So I'm thinking about writing more books. So yeah, it's just creating content really allows me to step away where I don't directing people all the time. They're kind of become more self-sufficient. Things become more self-sufficient.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important, like you said, for hiring to have that consistency, as well as operating procedures for clients. So clients don't think they're getting XYZ, and when there's a process or kind of a template involved, not to say that it's obviously cookie cutter, but there has to be some kind of a operating thing. If you're doing a social media campaign that's $5,000 a month versus 10 versus 2, and then in terms of scaling your overall business without a system or a process, you're never going to be able to scale any business.
Yep, absolutely. So do you use a lot of that in your business?
Yeah, I use a million tools that basically connect to a singular dashboard that's client-facing as well as internal-facing, just for the kind of the main metrics, and obviously ad hoc reporting that's more in depth in terms of ROI and what's been delivered in terms of numbers of sales, form submissions, calls, that kind of thing, and then internally what the processes are, what a client would get at a certain amount based on the kind of initial contract, and then plugging that into what they need to succeed. So yeah, and it's avoided a lot of headaches.
Is that a proprietary dashboard, or is that like a turnkey solution that you can just...
No, for that specifically, I use Sife. You can white label it and basically brand it to each client, give each client a login, so clients aren't bothering you about reports or how they're doing. So they still get a monthly report, but they can log in at any time and see what's moving, what's been spent, because I know there's some agencies that say one thing and spend another in terms of paid search or paid social. So there's a lot of transparency, and adds a lot of transparency, so there's no ambiguity into what's being delivered or what's being done.
Right, yeah, that does of course happen so often where, obviously the client is like, what's going on with my campaign? So having that transparency is so critical.
I agree. So what's one piece of advice you have for the audience, personal or professional?
I would say my advice always, when it comes to professional or entrepreneurship, is never stop learning. A lot of times I see the most successful businesses that I've worked with as clients are really the ones where, the business owner or or just the culture of the business itself is always continuously learning new, anything that's new, whether it's related to your industry, whether it's like just professionalism, anything in the professional space, or anything related to business, like reading or taking digital courses. So I'm a big proponent of that. It's so often that I see with companies where, they get very comfortable with what they do, they stop learning, they stop innovating, and then and that's how a lot of times businesses fail eventually, because they stop learning and innovating. So to me, I always feel like, even when I'm going to be, 80, 100 years old, with the way things are going now with stem cells, we'll probably live to be like 150 at this point. So, even when I'm going to be 80 or 100, I'll still be continuing to learn. So I highly recommend that. And that's usually my biggest piece of advice, especially for entrepreneurs, especially for new entrepreneurs, is it doesn't stop just, when you have a successful business. It's, never stops.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you get complacent, it leads to kind of you fading out. There's a lot of companies that were top companies, let's say 20 years ago, that no longer exist because they stopped innovating. And in terms kind of in the digital field, you're forced to keep innovating because things change so often. And then obviously new platforms come out and things like, possibilities with AR, VR, and voice. How are you going to market to that audience that moves over to different devices and platforms as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you do in your business to create that kind of culture, whether it's for yourself or for your employees?
And just devote time, usually Mondays, Fridays, to spend like a half hour, read basically scholarly articles, test things on specific sites or accounts, what you've seen, analyze metrics, test things or set up tests with things that you think will happen. Like right now, playing around with TikTok a lot. The demographic isn't as young as people think. So there's a lot of older people as well. I mean, older, I've seen some senior citizens on there making videos and different stuff, putting content out. And I think the demo I've seen a lot is about 25 to like 45, 50 actually. So really? Older people are moving on and there's no organic reach cap. So I think the fourth video I posted had like 25,000 views, 4,000 likes, like 300 shares. So there is a lot of opportunity, for branding, nothing less than branding. You can put your name out there, and even if some of the people that see it are younger, their parents are having the purchasing power still now. So, they may overhear their parents say, "Oh, I'm looking for so-and-so. Well, I saw this TikTok. There's this company, this woman, this guy that puts out this content and looks like they really know what they're doing. You should check it out." So there's still opportunities there. And like you said, you should always be learning and testing.
I am quite surprised on the demographics. I've tested out the TikTok app, just kind of went through it. It seems to be a lot. At least what I saw was definitely a lot younger, like 25 and under. So I'm surprised that you're finding that it's actually 25 to 45.
Yeah, and a lot of creators are moving over from Instagram to YouTube and YouTube to TikTok, and then building a community and then funneling that community back to their YouTube.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
What kind of content are you posting on TikTok? Is it similar to what you post to other social media channels, or are you making it more native to TikTok?
Well, the original kind of TikTok stereotypical content is like lip syncing songs and dancing. So yeah. I've not really done much of that, but promoting the podcast, different video clips, posting things about me being a foster parent, because there's a lot of misconceptions about foster care and people hear about kind of the horror stories. So highlighting, the positives of that. And then I'm starting to get into, I know some people I've had on the podcast themselves, I think they've grown to, tens of thousands of followers and, hundreds of thousands of likes on TikTok currently, where they basically do informational stuff. So, 5 best tools for so-and-so for my, marketing stack. This is what I use, or how to make money online. There's like things that are actually catchy on other platforms. They get information in terms of what's popular, like on Reddit boards, and then translate that and give that information kind of out free of charge, and stick to that 15, 30, or 60-second kind of format.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've only posted one video to TikTok as of now, but I definitely need to look into it. And of course, Gary Vee always says, he talks about TikTok now, but he's always the one that you have to follow, right? Because that's where things explode when he starts talking about a new platform.
Yeah, I agree. It's cool you got the opportunity. I saw to also interview him, which is awesome.
Yeah. A couple of months ago, he was on my podcast, and that was very it was awesome to do that. I mean, he's been one of my mentors. I mean, obviously not like directly a mentor, but someone that I consume his content a lot, and I think I really resonate. His message really resonates with me, and of course, he's also someone a former Soviet Union person that I can relate to. So yeah, so it's very special to have him on my podcast.
Yeah, I met him at his book signing last year at Wine Library. I mean, I briefly talked like 10 seconds with him, but other than that, a lot of people follow him for that kind of gritty, inspirational content, but I kind of follow him also for those marketing nuggets as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I follow him a lot, especially for the social media side, because I feel like he's so ahead of everything. Where I feel like I don't want to say like, he kind of predicts a lot of things that are going to happen. And so I definitely follow him a lot for the social media side of things.
Yeah, some right and some he's missed over time, but he's doing that kind of background, gathering that data that I don't have to necessarily gather in terms of what his team has seen and his personal brand, what he's doing. And then obviously test it myself and see if it has credibility in terms of what I'm doing. But he does a lot of the legwork for people. People just need to either run with it or test it themselves as well.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree.
So I really appreciate you coming on today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is really fun, and I'm glad we were able to share some ideas and some tools and things like that. Anybody who wants to follow me on social media, you can find me pretty much anywhere that's at Jean Ginzburg, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or YouTube or Facebook. So that's my handle pretty much for all social media platforms. It's just at Jean Ginzburg. So yeah, hope you guys found this helpful, and looking forward to connecting with you on social media.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk from Roman Prokopchuk's Digital Savage Experience podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, so that's always good. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online. Learn more at novazoradigital.com. Until next time, all you digital savages.